Medical marijuana and wellness. Today's topic is Florida's medical marijuana regulations, an important topic for patients, dispensary personnel, as well as caregivers. Let's talk about the Florida Office of Medical Marijuana Use. This is the organization that actually writes and implements the state's rules, oversees the state's registry, licenses businesses to cultivate and dispense, and also certifies test laboratories. It's important to understand that they also qualify physicians to be able to help qualify to make sure and diagnose patients to make sure they qualify for medical marijuana. Now, a quick overview of the Florida medical marijuana laws. The program was started in 2016. Currently has over 835,000 qualified patients. It has a number of state licensed dispensaries like Surterra, and also it is also operational. I do want to point out that there's no reciprocity, meaning that if you have the card, you cannot use it in other states. Home grow is not available today, and also there's no protections for employees if they are qualified patients. Caregivers have to be over the age of 21, and they have to agree to be able to assist the patient with the use of medical marijuana. They also need to be able to obtain a caregiver card that's issued by the Department of Health. Now, what's interesting about Florida is there's a number of qualifying conditions that you can see here for medical marijuana. Florida has done something right. They also have given the doctor the capability to take a look at the condition that you have, and if it's somewhat similar to any of the qualifying conditions, they can qualify you for a medical marijuana card. And what that means is, rather than coming up with lists and lists of qualifying conditions, the doctor can make the determination if you, in fact, do qualify for a medical marijuana card. So if you don't see your condition on the qualifying conditions, don't be afraid to go see a doctor. If you go see the doctor, he can take a look at your condition. If it's similar, like for example, in my case, he can actually qualify you for a medical marijuana card. And by the way, in most cases, if you don't qualify, the doctor does not charge you for that particular visit. Patients also have a possession limit. And I'm not going to go into this now. I have some slides on this. We'll talk about it. But you also are limited to the amount of cannabis that you can purchase and possess. Now, how do you qualify for a Florida medical marijuana card? You have to be 18 years or older. You have to have a permanent residency or be a seasonal resident, meaning you have to be able to show a bank account and or a utility bill. You have to have a medical condition. And by the way, if you're concerned about whether you qualify, if you go to mmtcfl.com/survey, it'll help you figure out if you do in fact qualify or have an eligible condition. Now, how does this all work? Well, first of all, if you do in fact have a qualifying condition, or you think you have one, you make an appointment with the physician. The physician will take your medical records, make a determination if you in fact are eligible for a card. And if you are, what they'll do is they'll place you in the medical marijuana use registry here in Florida. When they do that, you get what they call a P number. The P number is important because that's the number you need to give to the dispensary so they can look up your record and be able to dispense product to you. Most important, you have to give, or you should give, your doctor an email address. With that email address, what it does is it triggers a portal in the medical marijuana use registry where you can manage your profile, your current situation, how much you've used, and also allows you to help with renewals. So this is an important part in the program, and that email is the thing that triggers that. Once you get once you're put into the registry, the next step is you have to get a state card for the to access the medical marijuana registry. This is much like a driver's license. It's a card that has your P number on it. It's $75 to acquire it here in the state of Florida. And what happens is that with that particular card, it then allows the dispensaries to, in fact, dispense product to you. Now, once you have the P number, you're good to go to a dispensary, but it's important to have the card, which will be mailed to you, usually within a couple days after you actually qualify and fill out this registry information. Not just a matter of being put into the registry, it's a matter of actually getting, like a driver's license, getting that state card, medical marijuana use card that's there. Once that happens, you can then go to a dispensary. With that card, they're able to look at your particular condition and dispense medical cannabis to you. Now, if you are, in fact, taking a look at these steps, you go through these steps. if you are in fact a caregiver, you could be a caregiver as a close relative, or you could be a caregiver as uh, just a non-close relative. In this particular case, you fill out an application, you forward it to the OMMU to fill it out and forward it to the Medical Marijuana Use Registry. And what they'll do is, once approved, they'll come back and give you a caregiver card, which you need to be able to work with your particular patients. It's also important to point out that in the case of a non-close relative, you have to have a background check that's done. How does this all work? Well, you get your email, and it has a link to a portal which has a login. When you log in, you find out information about yourself. You can access a lot of information. For example, your profile, which allows you to update that. One of the things that it also allows you to do is, if you get close to a renewal period, this particular button right here will be activated. And what it allows you to do is, it allows you to then go in and to be able to renew your card. Now, in my particular case, I have renewed it recently, so that's not highlighted. But when I get within 45 days of renewal, that will be activated and you can fill it out. And the way you do that is, just like when you first get your card, you put in your photo, your proof of residency. You have to pay, of course, for that particular card, and they have a digital signature that you include in there. I should point out a couple of things. They like to have photos that are very similar to what I call passport photos, not necessarily glam photos. So you've got to have a kind of a nondescript background, a photo that they can see you, and also as a proof of residency, a bank account, a driver's license, or a rental notice. Well, actually, the rental agreement actually worked in that particular case. Now, the routes of administration here in the state of Florida really fall into a number of categories, and they break it down both by the substance that's applied and also by the targeted actions. Now, in each of these cases, they have edibles, vaporized products, orals, sublinguals, suppositories, topical creams, and also smoking. In the case of smoking, you'll be getting a 35-day limit. In all other cases, you'll be getting what they call a 70-day limit. Let me explain to you how all that works. What that means is that for edibles through topicals here, so the vaporized products, the sublinguals, there's a certain amount of product that you can purchase on a daily basis. And then over a 70-day period, there's there's a quantity that you can accumulate to be able to go into that particular area. If you go over that particular supply limit, you won't be able to buy product in that particular category. Now, in the case of smokable forms of cannabis, you're looking at about 2.025 grams a day, and you're looking at a 30-day supply of about 2.5 ounces. Now, what happens if you're using smokable cannabis and you in fact find out that you need to get more? You can go to your physician. He'll apply to the OMMU, and what they'll do is they'll look at extending that, or adding more than that 2.2 grams a day limit, or 2.5 ounces per 35-day period. And this is how you increase your limit that's over here. You've got to work with your doctor to be able to do that. So you're not necessarily limited to this, but it does take some time to go through that application and get a response back from the OMMU. Now, how does this all work? Well, we talked about flower patients are on kind of a 35-day clock. All of the products are on like a 70-day clock, where they go over and you look at the different supplies that you can purchase. And of course, that recommendation is good for 210 days. And if you do the math real quickly, you find out that 210 days equals 420 days total. What's interesting, and this is very important, your Florida Medical Marijuana Registry card is only good for 1 year, which is 365 days. So by the time you're in your second cycle of recommendations, about halfway through, you're going to get a notice you're going to have to renew your Florida Medical Marijuana card, because you need both the card as well as a recommendation to work with the dispensaries. This is a bit confusing, and I know there are times when you know you have your recommendation. Please pay attention to the fact that your card does expire at a certain point in time, and it will expire before your second recommendation expires. Important part. Now, once you have your profile, the question is, I have limits. How do I know what my limit is? Well, if you go to the registry, you'll find you have a profile. In the profile, they have something called orders. And in the orders, you're able to go down here and you're able to expand and look at the different orders that you, in fact, put into place. Now, This is where things can be a bit confusing, because when you look at things like here's inhalation, this is smokable cannabis. What happens is you have two particular areas that you can look at. One of them says dispensable amount, and one of them says amount remaining. If you, in fact, are using cannabis, what you're doing is you're accumulating the amount that you purchased over a particular period of time. So when it says there's 15,452 milligrams, what's interesting is because they have dispensed a lot of that, what is interesting is the amount, dispensable amount that the dispensary can give you is in fact up here in this particular category right here. So it's important to not look at this number, but to pay attention to this number when you go to the dispensary to know how much you can purchase at this particular point in time and how much you're eligible for. And also it gives you kind of a good notice of where you stand with respect to your 35-day period or your 70-day period, depending on which product that you're looking at. What types of routes of administration are there? Oral, edibles, topicals, vaporizers, concentrates, and flower. The only one that you have to worry about with respect to time frame, a shorter time frame, is in fact flower, which is on a 35-day clock versus a 70-day clock for the rest of the particular products that are there. Caregivers, important. Must be a Florida resident, must be 21 years of older and older. You don't necessarily have to be a Florida medical marijuana physician. In other words, you can be a nurse, a practitioner, and be able to get a caregiver's card. And they don't want you to be employed by a dispensary, and that's what's important. Now, you can complete a certification for caregivers. We have a course that you have to take. It's good for 2 years, and then of course you have to apply and get your card to be able to handle and be able to work with patients. Now, you have to pay attention to the fact if you're a close relative or a non-close relative. In both cases, you apply for the registry, you fill out a form, but in the case of non-relatives, you do have to do a background check, and I think that's really, really important, and that includes filling out and submitting some fingerprints. Caregivers also are in a position where they are, let's just say, required to be able to provide product to the patient. Now, the question becomes, what kind of a caregiver are you? In other words, if you are a relative, there's different categories that fall in here. And I'm not going to go through each one because they're not complicated, but there's a lot of them. They're just proof of your either birth certificate, marriage certificate, or something like that to be able to show the state of Florida that, in fact, you do have a relationship with that particular patient. So what are the main questions that people ask about the medical marijuana program here in Florida? Where do you find a medical marijuana doctor, or where can you find it? Well, there's a list of physicians that we'll actually have a link in the video below that has all the authorized physicians who can authorize and put you into the registry. So there's a link to be able to do that. Where can you get medical marijuana? You can only purchase medical marijuana from Florida state licensed dispensaries. They call them medical marijuana treatment centers. You can't buy it off the street. You have to buy it from one of these folks. And actually, when you purchase it, on the product itself will be a label. Pay attention to that label, because when you have the product and you're out in public or you have it in your purse or in your car, if you're stopped by a police officer, they'll actually be looking for that label. So make sure that the label and the product stay together when you're actually using it outside your home or you're out in public. You need to get a background check. The answer is, if you're a non-close relative, the answer is yes. But as a medical marijuana user here in Florida, the answer is no. Now, always the fun part is, can I purchase a new gun? Well, this is kind of not clear right now. And the reason for that is because the federal laws have been fairly clear that they ask you if you're using cannabis or medical marijuana for medical marijuana in general. Now, there's regulations that have in the past stopped a number of people from being able to purchase a gun. However, there's been recent court filings that have removed that federal restriction. So it's kind of up in the air right now on whether you can, in fact, get a gun. I know people who have purchased guns with medical marijuana license. I know I've seen people that have been rejected. So it's kind of a hit or miss thing right now. And hopefully we'll get some clarification as time goes on. But again, these court rulings that have removed the federal regulations really open that door and hopefully we'll be able to go through it in the near future. Question is, what's the difference between a recommendation and a prescription? Well, prescriptions are typically given under federal law, and they're typically given by a federal agency to be able to prescribe drugs related to a particular category. Since cannabis is illegal under federal law, you really can't give a prescription, meaning take 2 pills and see me in the morning. What they do is they give a recommendation that say, based on the usage type, the type of product, and the usage, you'll be able to give a recommendation of so many milligrams or milliliters of that particular product to be able to use. Now, how long does a recommendation last? 210 days. But remember, each of those days are broken down into. Florida has set it up so that in the case of flower, there's 35-day limits. In the case of non-flower or all other products, there's 70-day limits that are out there. So you just can't buy everything right up front for the quarter. They want you to space it out and use it as you go along. How long will the Florida medical marijuana ID card last? It lasts for 1 year. And if you need to increase the limit that you have, so you need more flower, you need more tincture, you can actually go to your doctor. What they do is they actually file an exemption with the state of Florida, the OMMU, and typically they come back to you. This particular process usually takes about 14 days to happen. So plan ahead if you fall into this particular category. Now, what's the difference between low THC cannabis and medical marijuana? Well, low THC cannabis means that the plant comes from cannabis. So this could be dried flowers, contains less than 0.8% THC. And what's interesting is it is a product that is low in THC, but high in CBD. And there's a lot of products, for example, my wife uses a product that is 9 CBD to 1 THC. That seems to help her particular condition. And that falls into the medical marijuana regulations here in the state of Florida. Medical cannabis refers to any product that's used that contains cannabis that helps the patients. Now, let's do a quick summary. Can I own a gun? You can't. You can be a minor. The answer is yes, you can own a gun. The answer is also, if you're a minor, can you in fact be part of the state medical marijuana program? And the answer is yes, you can. The difference is, though, when you're a minor, less than 18 years old, you have to have 2 medical marijuana doctors sign the application to put you into the state registry. There's no sales tax. You can't use your card in other states. And really, you can't take your product across state lines. Unfortunately, right now, the medical marijuana laws here in the United States are state by state. Can a minor, again, we talked about this, can a minor get a card? And the answer is yes. But again, second physician has to concur that you, in fact, have that particular condition. It must be issued by a physician that has a card that certifies him to be able to prescribe medical cannabis. And it's not an issue, in fact, if it's in a form of smoking or if it's in a form of other products. Typically, you have to have a legal guardian that works with you that actually provides a written consent. And also, you must pay the under 18 patient must work with a designated caregiver. So it's kind of interesting where they have 2 doctors that recommend you. You have a caregiver that helps to administer, purchase the products for you, because it's important that when you go into the medical marijuana dispensary, that you have the caregiver buying the card and not the minor themselves. So, in summary, what are the resources? There's a Know the Facts area for the Office of OMMU. There's a registry, there's a patient registry, and there's a list of qualified doctors. These are going to be provided to you in the links below. And if you're looking to get a medical marijuana card, I recommend looking at the medical marijuana treatment clinics. They have 25 clinics here in Florida. Surterra Wellness does an excellent job of providing products for, in fact, your particular use, and they have great ratioed products. If you're looking for CBD-based products, we have My Botanical Wellness. And if you're looking for patient education, like this video and other videos on how to use medical marijuana, go to our YouTube channel on Medical Marijuana Aware, and you'll be able to access that information. What's the bottom line? It's safe. You physically cannot overdose, and there's no negative side effects from using cannabis. The World Health Organization has not recorded any deaths from medical cannabis in the last 50 years. It's very, very important. You may get sick. You may not feel well, you may sleep, but you're not going to die. And that's the important part about it. Also, you're in control of how much you take. It's important to learn how to dose. We go low and we go slow, so you know what your limits are with respect to THC and how much cannabis is used to be able to address your particular medical condition. Please go to our YouTube channel and check out the dosing webinar. It's very, very important because cannabis works is not more is not necessarily better. Sometimes by using more cannabis, it actually works against you. So we have to really find out what your optimal therapeutic dosage level is. Can you get addicted? Cannabis has no addictive properties. Unlike opioids and nicotine, has no addictive properties to it. Are people what they call addicted to cannabis? There are people that require or want medical cannabis. I myself have herniated discs in my neck. There's 7 of them. And if I don't take medical cannabis, the pain level is actually something that is not, let's just say, not acceptable and makes my life very difficult. I'm not addicted to cannabis. What I'm addicted to is getting rid of the pain. I think there's a difference between them. I can stop using medical cannabis at any point in time without any physical harm to my particular body. And that's what's really, really important. And as we covered everything before, do you need to smoke it? The answer is no, you don't. There's other routes of administration. And of course, the entourage effect is the reason why everybody uses cannabis, because each of the individual cannabinoids work together to enhance their medical efficacy and make it a lot more effective. Thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you'll be following us both on social media. I'll go to our YouTube channel to be able to check out videos, not only on medical cannabis, but on the use of medical cannabis. Check out our weekly medical marijuana aware videos on medical cannabis. And of course, if you have any questions, please send us an email. Thank you very much for joining us.